When Universal released the first trailer for their upcoming live action How to Train Your Dragon remake, it was actually pretty well received, as evidenced by the official Universal Pictures YouTube channel, where you can see the trailer is currently sitting at 229,000 likes to 27,000 dislikes. And if you kind of look at the comments, they're not necessarily negative about the movie either. A lot of them are just kind of like this. The most live action movie of all, every shot for shot was like the animated version. Hiccup seems like a cold guy doesn't want him to lose a leg or something. My biggest concern was how Toothless was going to look in this movie, and I'm honestly not disappointed with the designs. I'm positive there. Come here, watch this scene, now act it out. Yeah, that's kind of what they did when it comes to this. What a nice movie. I sure hope it gets animated soon. You get the idea. There's not negativity surrounding this movie. In fact, a lot of people seem to really like the original movie. They're just saying that this comes across as being basically the exact same thing as the original movie. And one of the things that I've said about remakes in the past is I don't inherently have a problem with a remake, but there is a balancing act that I think needs to be had when it comes to remaking a movie, especially one from a beloved IP. You have to do something different in order to justify why you're going to watch this particular movie instead of the original one. Because if you're just copying the original one, then there's no point in watching it. I don't need to pay money to go see it in theaters. I can just watch it at home if I want to. But if you're going to make it so different that it doesn't feel like that it's even a part of the same movie and it's like a remake and name only, then that's off-putting to a lot of audiences too. So you need to have that balancing act there. But I think I may actually be in the minority on that one. And I think a lot of audiences are happy to go and watch a live action remake, just so long as it reminds them of the original one, regardless of whether or not they do anything different with the movie, because we've seen from the early projections for this movie that it's actually looking like it's going to have a pretty strong opening weekend. It's saying here 80 to $100 million domestically. So I think it's fair to assume another like $100 million or so internationally during its opening weekend. Now, we don't know the budget for this movie, but it's speculated to be around $150 million range. And I think that's kind of a fair estimate for it. Factor in maybe generously another $100 million marketing spend for this movie. So they're invested $250 million, which means they probably need to make 500, maybe closer to $600 million at the global box office in order to just break even. And if they bring in $200 million during that opening weekend, that's a pretty good start, even if it has just kind of a lukewarm reception with audiences. That should be good enough in order to carry it over that finish line and to be profitable, unless the reception to the movie is just so terrible that it falls off a cliff after that opening weekend. But it's looking like that might not be the case because audiences we've seen from some other recent live action remakes like Lilo and Stitch, for instance, even if it does deviate from the source material in a manner that a lot of fans think is disrespectful to it, for the most part, they were staying true, or at least they reminded audiences who liked the original one, but didn't necessarily love it or weren't like necessarily like hardcore fans of it. I mean, if you basically just kind of have something, but with the paint job of something that they're familiar with, then it seems like audiences are going to be satisfied with it. Something that we didn't see with the live action Snow White, which is why that failed. And which is why I think it looks like Lilo and Stitch is probably going to be successful. And if that holds true, then this movie will probably be successful as well. But the director of it doesn't seem as confident, because he expressed concerns about how audiences will react to this movie in a recent interview. How to Train Your Dragon director reveals concerns about live action remake. And then this kind of talks about Lilo and Stitch and about how some live action remakes can be wildly successful, but we've seen a lot of people are skeptical over it. But they say that they're not really interested in live action remakes, and I'm talking about audiences in general, but yet a lot of studios continue to push them out. And for the most part, they make a lot of money. So I think that's really the ticket here is you just don't try to reinvent the wheel with it. Just basically, people like this property, just give them that again, and they'll give you your money for it, even if you don't put in much effort beyond just trying to replicate what was in the animated film. When asked by Cinema Blend about the audience reception to the remake of How to Train Your Dragon, director Dean DeBlois spoke candidly about his worries regarding how the film would be perceived. Specifically, director revealed he was well aware of the complaints that come with essentially every remake. while confident in his project. The filmmaker worried that assumptions the audiences had about its quality or justification for it being made would lead to a negative reaction. And yes, there probably will be a negative reaction if it just comes across as being a copy of the original one or a remake in name only. I don't think that's what we're getting at when it comes to this. There's always going to be a negative reaction whenever you adapt an IP like this. And I think that kind of comes with the territory. It's the first time we played it for anybody. I was certainly worried, just because I shouldn't say worried. I was confident in the movie, but I wasn't confident in whether people would embrace it. You know, they might be too attached to the animated movie, or there's that whole discussion of like, why does it even exist? You know, it's too early, or the animated movies are fine. You know, I just kind of want to go back to this point. He says right here, you know, they might be too attached to the animated movie. I mean, to me, that's kind of why they're remaking this to begin with. That's why you have live action remakes of beloved movies, because they have that built-in fan base. Complaining about that, it seems like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, saying like, okay, we're going to adapt this IP that has a built-in fan base, presumably to try to bring that fan base into theaters to watch our movie, because if they like the original movie, then they should show up and support our movie and we can make a lot of money off of them. But saying like you don't like that they're too attached to the original one, or at least they'll be critical over how you change things or do things on your own, on your version of it, that should be expected. I mean, if you're going to try to adapt something that has a big built-in fan base like that because you want them to support you, then you should expect criticism from them, because they're not just, or at least they say they're not just going to hand over their money for free. But let's be honest, a lot of audiences have been doing that lately, which is, like I said, why studios continue to push out these remakes like this. So I don't think he has to necessarily be as concerned about criticism surrounding this movie, because if people are still showing up to watch it, well, then I guess that's all that really matters. Now, there is talk about them already having a sequel to this in the work. So if this movie, even if it does make money for them but is poorly received, then the remake probably, or the sequel to this, probably won't be do nearly as well at the box office, and that will fall through. Right now, it's still kind of a novelty where people may support it because they're like, okay, I kind of want to see what this looks like in live action. Afterwards, if it doesn't offer anything else, then they'll be like, okay, yeah, that was fine, but I don't need to watch anything more because I've seen it. You have to offer them something else in order to keep them interested, and that's kind of what he's getting at right here. Despite those worries, DeBlois had a unique process for making the film. As he would say, it's up to us, the creative team, to try to convince audiences that it's worthwhile. We went down the path to give more character richness or immersive action and build up the mythology a little bit, providing a more lived in and fully realized world than the original film is certainly a way to keep audiences engaged in a live action remake. And yeah, like I agree with that sentiment. If you're going to do a live action remake, you need to do something that's different in order to justify your existence, even though some movies can get away with just doing the exact same thing or just having a paint job over it. At least according to what he's saying, that's not what they're doing with this one. Now, whether or not this movie will find success remains to be seen, because a lot of audiences are also weary of movies that are just making changes for the sake of making changes. A big example of this is Nico Parker, who's cast as Astrid in a race-swapped role. Even though she's not necessarily the most ethnically looking, still it's a race-swap role, and it is noticeable. This is something that the director of this even addressed, and basically saying like, yeah, we did it for the sake of doing it. That's not a big deal or anything like that. And it's like, okay, well, he might not think so, but there's some audiences that might be off-putting too, because they just like, well, if you're going to adapt it, then just try to do what the original one did, as opposed to making changes just for the sake of making changes. Will that be enough to sink this? I'm not necessarily convinced. I never saw the live action Lilo and Stitch. From what I've heard from the ending, it's a pretty drastic deviation from the original movie, and a lot of fans of the original movie are not really happy with it. But so far, the audience reception to that has been pretty positive, and it looks like the movie is going to go on to make a huge amount of money at the box office. So it seems like it is kind of what I was saying. Just so long as you do the exact same thing, have a paint job of the original one, that's going to be enough to bring in audiences, because they just don't care enough or about whether or not the movie is faithful to the original one, just so long as it looks like the original one. So I think the director of this may be overthinking it a little bit, but I do think you do have to have some respect towards the original one, because if you try to change the messaging, or not necessarily the messaging, but the story and all the themes of it so much so that it's very obvious that it feels like a different movie, then that's when you get a lot of pushback. We saw that with Snow White. We didn't see that with Lilo and Stitch, because even though there was changes made, it wasn't so dramatic, kind of detract from it. We'll just have to wait and see whether the changes in the How to Train Your Dragon will be enough to keep audiences interested, or will it push them away? But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to click the like button and share this video out there, because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.